What's up, everybody? Bootsy Greenwood here, still talking about the Kybalion, and today I want to talk about duality. Now, duality, what a great, awesome, confusing, paradoxical thing this is, okay? The universe, everything is dual, everything has its opposite, is what the Kybalion talks about. It talks about how there's no such thing as neither hot or cold. Everything's really just the same, it's just different in degree. So if we take water as an example, this is colder than this, but this is colder than this. So what's cold and what's hot? It's not really binary like that, right? Like when we explore this center here, okay, and we've got what? We call it positive and negative. It's really positive in cathode, right? And really, I highly recommend reading Outwitting the Devil, actually, to understand this concept better. Because in that book, Napoleon Hill interviews the devil, and the devil says that I am nothing more than the negative half of the atom. And he starts to explain what that means. The law of hypnotic rhythm, how people don't think for themselves. They allow themselves to be thought, and then that, becomes this cycle, this rhythm that people just get hypnotized by. And then all of a sudden, they've sort of lost their self-awareness. They're only participating in the little me. They're no longer in the big I perspective, right? So they get sucked in sort of to the negative. Whereas the positive, you sort of have to take action to open yourself up to this positive side. But now if we were to explore the middle, we would see that if we could just slip right in there, then we would have this vast gray area that we could explore. Because things are not really so black and white as they seem. Even, you've seen this before in a lot of music videos and movies and stuff like that, where you see this checkerboard floor, kind of thing, like a chessboard kind of deal. And you see that. And that's just a symbol. It's just this binary symbol is what it is, right? And I think like the Masons and other, groups have viewed this and used it as a bit of a, symbol. And it just means duality, right? If you've ever heard somebody is on the square, it means they're on the square, they're on the four circuits of consciousness. It's a square, right? So they haven't really become self-actualized yet. They haven't gained a higher perspective. That's what that means. So that's dualistic thinking. Anybody who's like, well, it's either this or it's that. Usually they're not the most open-minded type of people, right? We do see that a lot in nature. So that's what this chapter is talking a lot about, right? Things are different in degree only, right? It's like I've talked about how, love is not the opposite of hate. Really, indifference is. Right? So we have 0 to 100, and this is just a lack, right? This would be negative, and this would be positive. But we're not here and here all the time. We're somewhere in between there. We might be here. This might be neutral for us. And the idea for us is to try to elevate neutral as close as we can to get to 100, let's say, right? That's probably not very likely, but we can get as high as we possibly can on that scale and become as aware as possible, and allow ourselves to really start working on pushing from, let's say this represents, let's say, happy and joyful and those types of things, and this is maybe sad, right? Well, we want to start navigating to happier and happier, more full of joy and appreciation and gratitude and these types of things. But not in a fake way, of course. We just want to make sure that we're exploring the middle, that we're not falling to one side or the other and being polarized. And it happens a lot. This polarization idea is very much exactly the same as like just being hooked, right? You're hooked by this thing and it's got your attention, and now all of a sudden you're reacting to it either positively or negatively, and that's polarization. When something confronts you, or an idea or something someone says, and you feel that energy of your resistance or your like desire to like react to that, that is polarization. So the idea is to live here where you're less polarized, right? Like you're never going to be right in the exact middle, unfazed, perfect. But at the same time, with awareness, with perspective, we can live in a place where we can walk, and when things happen, we're not immediately affected, right? We're not like taking the bait of the situation that's ahead of us. We have a higher perspective. We're able to see that we're here right now, but we're going to continue to move, and things will shift and go. And we'll talk a lot about that in cause and effect, where causes from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago are still creating effects and ripples in reality that we're dealing with. So we can never see all of the causes that are creating these different effects, right? So all of this stuff is happening and everything seems like a paradox. And truly all paradoxes are resolved because they're half-truths, okay? So duality means that determinism is true and so is free will. They're both true, they're both half-truths. So that's what we want to understand about this, which will help us to understand and learn to be less polarized, less affected by this thing or that thing, and reactive toward this or that, whether it be positive or negative. It's still polarized, it's still giving that thing energy. So what we want to do is kind of be in the middle, right? We want to understand both sides and be able to choose our own experience from a higher and higher perspective. So determinism and free will, both half-truths, right? Like all paradoxes can be resolved through the idea of duality. So that's one thing to keep in mind. All the causes from the past, that is determinism, okay? The fact that you can jump into the air whenever you feel like it, that is free will. So you do have free will, but there's also all this stuff that's happened over time that's built up on itself. And then, these causes have effects and ultimately they're experienced. It's the law of cause and effect, also somewhat known as karma, right? And even balancing forces in a way has something to do with it. But this has more to do with things just happening over time with a lot of different variables that our minds are not aware of, that we can't really see, creating the landscape that which we navigate in the now. And then now we can choose from that flow, from the amount of options that we have in our immediate reality, what we're going to do next. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here. So we want to understand that everything in nature has its opposite, but that opposite really isn't any different than the thing itself. It's only different in degree, right? So some of these opposites are interesting. Like I recommend sitting down and trying to ponder this. All of these principles are very difficult to understand in your mind and difficult to explain, but they can be experienced. And think about it, meditate on it, think about how this is, visible in your life, how it's affected you, and we'll talk about how all these principles really are reflected in each other. It's almost impossible to talk about this one without talking about some of the other ones, like cause and effect, for instance. So that's going to do it for this video. Remember, all paradoxes are resolved through duality. Everything is only different in degree. Everything has its opposite, but it's only really different in degree. Hot is only cold relative to cold. Cold is only hot relative to hot. If you like this video, please like it, leave me a comment, and check me out on Patreon. New podcasts coming out, new comedy stuff coming out on the Flying Squid channel, and lots of other cool stuff. Free stuff on Gumroad and a couple other things. Thank you guys so much. Merry Christmas.